Permanent magnets, pretty familiar, right? Small, simple objects you can find almost anywhere at home. But what if I told you that this very magnet can be turned into a homemade antenna? Sounds hard to believe? Keep watching, I'll show you how. And if you have something similar at home, grab it and try it with me. Next, prepare 2 single electrical wires, and make sure they're long enough so you can work comfortably. Now we're going to wind these 2 wires together, following exactly the steps I'm doing here. This isn't a random wrap. It's designed to mimic the structure of an inductor used in electronics. Take it slow, keep your hands steady, and make sure the coils stay tight and neat. While winding the wire, it's a good idea to use hot glue to secure it in place. This helps the coil become much more solid, keeping the turns tight and preventing the wire from coming loose later on. Just apply a small amount of glue. No need to overdo it, just enough to hold the shape. And do you know why I modeled the main signal receiving part of this homemade antenna after the structure of an inductor? The reason comes down to how an inductor works in electronics. When the wires are wound evenly, tightly, and in an organized way, they create a stable magnetic field as electromagnetic signals pass through. That magnetic field helps concentrate the signal, reduces dispersion, and minimizes unwanted noise. On top of that, an inductor-style structure helps retain signal energy more effectively, instead of letting it leak into the surrounding environment like a straight piece of wire would. Simply put, the neater, tighter, and more solid the coil is, the better this homemade antenna becomes at receiving and transmitting signals. And that's exactly why I chose an inductor-style design for this critical component. Once the winding is done, I'll move on to connecting the wires so this structure can work as efficiently as possible. It may look simple, but this step plays a huge role in how well the signal is received and transmitted. Just follow what I'm showing you here. Trust me, this is something you won't find being taught out there. For those who may not know, this is heat shrink tubing. It provides excellent electrical insulation, making your connections much safer. On top of that, once it's shrunk in place, the electrical joint looks much cleaner and more polished. Not just secure but neat and professional as well. Using a wooden base for the antenna is also a unique part of my creative approach. Wood is easy to work with, sturdy, and it gives the whole setup a clean, simple, and very DIY look. Sometimes, the simplest materials are what give a project its character and effectiveness. What you're looking at here is a male power plug. Now, I'm going to connect it to the 2 remaining wire ends over there. You might not even be familiar with this female power plug. In fact, very few people use it, mainly because most don't realize how convenient it can be for certain specific applications like this one. But when used in the right situation, it turns out to be surprisingly useful. For anyone who enjoys building DIY projects, the coaxial cable I'm holding here should look pretty familiar. This type of cable is designed specifically for signal transmission, with a central conductor, insulation, and a shielding layer, which helps keep the signal stable and reduces interference. At this step, I'm connecting one end of the coaxial cable to the female power plug I mentioned earlier. This setup keeps everything neat and works well for efficient signal transfer. For the other end of the coaxial cable, I'll be adding a straight F connector, along with a 90-degree F connector, so it can be connected directly to the TV. This here is the straight F connector I mentioned just a moment ago. And this one here is the 90-degree F connector. So that means the assembly is basically complete. To be honest, I'm a bit excited myself. Now I'm really curious to see how it performs once we connect it to the TV. Before I go ahead and make the connection, let's take a moment to verify this together. Right now, before anything is plugged in, the TV screen is completely showing no signal. That was fast. The moment I plugged it in, the TV immediately started showing broadcast channels. The initial result looks great for sure. But let's not jump to conclusions just yet. We'll give it a bit more time and see how it holds up. After waiting for a while and not noticing anything unusual, I decided to disconnect it and then plug it back in again just to be sure. So after going through every step, from assembling and wiring, to checking and finally testing it directly on the TV, we can now see the final result of this homemade antenna. Everything started with simple, familiar materials, nothing expensive, nothing complicated, yet when they're put together the right way, the performance turns out to be quite impressive. And the most important part here isn't just how many channels it can receive, but understanding the principle behind how it works, why an inductor-like structure improves signal reception, and how proper wiring plays such a big role in the final outcome. DIY isn't just about building something, it's about experimenting, observing, and learning along the way. And if this video helped you understand even a small part of that, then for me it's already been worth it.